This river must surely find its source in the Garden of Eden. In pronouncing these words in 1498 when he arrived at the mouth of the Orinoco River, Christopher Columbus was far from imagining that this very big river, the third largest in the world in terms of flow, crisscrossed a region where one of the most unbelievable myths of all time would be born, the El Dorado. The real wealth, though, of this huge territory of 2 million square kilometers, bordered on the north by the Orinoco and on the south by the Amazon, is not gold, but nature and the Amerindian peoples.
The Amerindian groups were pushed back starting precisely with the different colonizations that took place along the whole coast. There are several families, but there is especially a large Amerindian population that is originally from one single region, the Amazonian region. And you have several groups living there. There is, for example, a federation of Amerindians from Guyana. But I think that basically we can really talk about one single large Amerindian group.
We are going to discover a part of this Amerindian region throughout this voyage on board the Levant. From Cayenne in French Guyana, we'll hug the marshy coast bordering the Guyanese plateau until Paramaribo, the capital of Suriname, formerly Dutch Guyana. Next, we'll make our way into the Delta. Then we'll head on down the Orinoco in Venezuela, winding up our journey in Guadeloupe. Thus, we'll follow the long migration route of the Amerindians from the Amazon till Guyana and the Caribbean, the Manioc Trail. Beginning in 1494, after Columbus's first voyage, the Spanish and the Portuguese started dividing up the New World. The demarcation line between the two empires crossed a vast region stretching from the Orinoco Delta to the mouth of the Amazon River. But the Spanish preferred the wealth of the West Indies, Mexico or Peru. They ceded these 3,000 kilometers of marshy coast to the English, the Dutch, and the French. The French settled in Cayenne on a site belonging to the Indian chief Seperu, whose name is the same as that of the fort dominating the town. During the 18th century, Guyanese development remained chaotic compared to the Dutch and especially the English colonies. In 1788, scarcely over 1,000 whites and 10,000 slaves, a majority African, were to be found. But the abolition of slavery in 1848 and the establishment of a penitentiary profoundly transformed the colony. Without turning its back on its Amerindian roots, but open to influences from all over the world, today Cayenne offers up the face of a society shaped by the Creoles.
We're at the Place des Palmistes. This square used to be called Place de la Savane. It was developed by Governor Loubert in 1822. The square is symbolic because it's the place where the Guyanese gathered to celebrate, also to welcome groups during Carnival, that time of the year so dear to them. And across from me, you can see a very beautiful Creole house with exceptionally fine architecture. Below, you can still find the famous Palmistes Bar, where all the well-to-do and others would sit who wanted to take in the young women passing by or watching gatherings and events.
Taking the Rue Christophe Colomb, bordered by both old and new Creole-style houses, we meander on down towards the market. When Joséphine Malacarné comes to the market, it's more about strolling and meeting up with friends than anything else.
What do you like most when you come to the market?
Talking to folks. When we run into nice ones.
Alors, madame, vous êtes avocat?
Avocados, yams, bananas, or even mangoes, maracuja, limes, or rambutans. We owe the diversity of fruits and vegetables that brighten up the market stalls to the European colonization, to the African slaves, and to the more recent Asian migration. In a word, this is the ethnic mosaic which makes up the Guyanese society today. A society, though, which must not forget its Amerindian legacy.
We have found what many Indians ate: palm trees, awara, all that, the parapoo, komu. It was all there already.
And the manioc?
Manioc too. In fact, we did find all that. There are things that nature just gave us.
Josephine set up the Guyanese Gastronomy Society with some friends. From scorched pigs to game or marinated smoked chicken, they cook up a storm of many traditional recipes, combining the flavors of the Americas and Africa. We are under the equator here in Guyane. Night falls fast. At Place des Palmistes, some strollers try and escape the dampness while faraway drum rolls echo. Cornelia leads the rehearsal of her group, Bolero, under the covered playground of the school. Despite the pleasure and happy-go-lucky attitude we can read on the faces of these adolescents, they all know that these dances, born for the most part during the slave period, are perhaps, with the color of their skin, the strongest link connecting them to their African roots.
You haven't understood a thing. I just told you not to get up so fast, and you get up too fast.
I was going to fall.
Ah, you were going to fall. You need balance. Let's go. Let's try it with the music. Go on, down, down, down. There. And you get up, and you stay below. All our dances are inherited from French dances, English dances, etc. The labassu is inspired from African dances because, you know, during the colonization, we got Africans, St. Lucians, Martinique, and each brought his own traditions that ended up shaping our own traditions. And we're the richer for it. You've seen that I had a flower dress on. It's called La Petite Gaule Fleurie. And the girls, they dance dressed in work clothes. This dress is called La Gaule Bleue. For the labassu, you need two kinds of drums and a little wooden one. The first one is the one that gives the beat. The second is the accompaniment, and the little wooden one is the backup for the dancers as well as the drummers. The le rôle, Grigoriy, Caseco, the Camuguet, all these dances come from here with maybe influences from elsewhere, but they're really from here because these dances are only danced in Guyana.
We're leaving Cayenne to go back to the Levant, anchored a short distance from the riverbank. Change of decor and atmosphere for the evening ritual that precedes the boat's departure. During the night, we head north towards Paramaribo. Hugging the coast, we approach Suriname, formerly Dutch Guyana. Little by little, the ocean exchanges its color for that of the earth.
How you doing, pilot?
Yeah.
Fine?
All down the coast, hundreds of rivers accompany the powerful Amazon and Orinoco, carrying along an uninterrupted flow of mud.
This one is standing on our dam for this whole house.
The country of 1,000 waters. That is what the Amerindians, living in harmony with the rivers, call this region. Slowly, for about 20 kilometers, we go upstream on the estuary of the Suriname River, leading us to Paramaribo, the capital of the country. Built on the banks of the Suriname River, Paramaribo is home to about 200,000 inhabitants, 5 times more inhabitants than Cayenne. In spite of the bridge opening recently, a significant part of the population persists in using the sundry and assorted flotilla of small crafts that link the two sides of the river to get to work or to come to the market. The population of Paramaribo is extremely mixed. Asians have been added to the Amerindians, descendants of African slaves and Creoles from the first colonizations, notably the Javanese and Chinese, coming from other parts of the Dutch colonial empire. In the beginning, the country only attracted adventurers searching for El Dorado, and some colonists buying wood and tobacco from the Indians. Though long time a country of deadly conflicts with the English, Suriname ended up being administered by the Dutch West Indies Company at the end of the 17th century. From then on, the country was in the hands of wealthy planters and their families and turned prosperous, thanks to sugarcane and slavery. By the 17th century, driven as much by ecumenism as by economic reality, the Dutch turned Suriname into a land of refuge and tolerance. Throughout the centuries, as the colony developed, Catholic churches, mosques, and synagogues will all see the light of day in Paramaribo. The first synagogue in the country, built in 1665, welcomed worshippers from Holland, Italy, and Brazil. Cohen Nassi, a Portuguese Jew arriving from Cayenne at that period, writes about Suriname. There is perhaps no other place in the world where religious tolerance is more widespread. Each prays to God as he sees fit, and each does what he sees necessary for the salvation of his soul. Cohen Nassi never could have imagined that 2 centuries later, in 1863, to compensate for the lack of labor directly connected to the abolition of slavery, Suriname would welcome tens of thousands of Hindustan Muslims coming from Java and the Indian Peninsula. Creoles, Amerindians, Bush Negroes, the descendants of runaway slaves, Chinese, Hindustani. For each of them, the official language is Dutch, but this learned language is not accessible to everybody. So when they're not using their ethnic language like Chinese or Hindustani, they speak Taki-Taki, a simple, colorful, and picturesque language combining Dutch, English, Spanish, and French. In the heart of this ethnic mosaic, harmony is not always the rule, and each community is often very inward-looking, tied into its own system. Besides fruits, vegetables, and spices, and all the other products you can usually find in market stalls, in Paramaribo you can buy birds. And not just any old birds. Coming from Asia with the Chinese, the Hindustani, and the Javanese, the passion for competitive birds is gaining ground among the ethnic groups in the town.
In fact, it's a hobby, a sport that Surinamians like a lot. A very popular sport. This bird here is a picolet, and that one is a tua-tua. They're tropical birds coming from our forests or the Amazon region. They are captured by the inhabitants of the region, the Indians, or even the forest Creoles. People interested in these birds of competition are mostly the Chinese, the Hindustanis, the Javanese, and also some Creoles, but mostly Chinese and Hindustani.
At day's end, we return to the Levant. During the night, we push on to Venezuela and the Orinoco Delta.
How many miles from the Seaboy?
Okay, right now we are on the number 6.
Pedro, what time you in the channel?
Here we're on automatic pilot. The idea is to stay in the channel, which is very narrow. For that, we only need good vision, because basically you just have to know how to look straight ahead. And we have instruments, radar, which gives us the positions of the buoys in the channel. So here we continue to follow the channel, and we'll do this for 2 hours before picking up the river pilot, who will pilot us all along the Orinoco. We're routed by a piloting station, a traffic controller, and it's one way. So we won't have any boats. There's no room to pass or to cross. We're a passenger boat, so we have priority for the moment.
In the early morning, we are anchored in the middle of an immense river. Climbing aboard the rubber dinghy, we head out for that part of the journey that we've awaited so long, the very heart of the Orinoco Delta. This gigantic delta, the second on continental America, spreads out over more than 30,000 square kilometers. After a short ride, we leave the main part of the river to penetrate the interior via a narrow branch. We cut off the gas. Thanks to the silence of the electric motor, we advance slowly, the song of the forest our only guide. Nearly 20,000 Warao Indians, whose name means the master of the dugout in the Indian language, live in the middle of this aquatic labyrinth.
Porque aquí el calle continúa y vuelve al río, ¿cierto? El grande. Pero hay un canal que llega al lado de la ciudad. Sí, llega allá. ¿Ese de aquí?
Let's say the Indian group that inhabits here are the Warao. These probably are descendants of the first people that came around. From recent research done in the Amazon, they found out there are people that were living there 11 to 12,000 years ago. The carbon dating, they found out that at the same time there were already people living in the Amazon, and probably those were the people that went up colonizing the Caribbean. The people here lead a day-to-day life, so they will be fishing. Since there are not many ways to preserve fish, they will have to go fishing almost every day. And also things that they can produce are the manioc. They make the manioc flour, and for that they will need a place which is above the water, even during the highest of the high tides. You go in the Amazon going up to Peru, between Brazil and Peru, that's the area that supposedly is the origin of the manioc. When the Spaniards and the Portuguese came around here, they found the manioc and they took it also to Africa and they took it to Asia. So you can probably find also these things out in Africa and Asia as well.
In this part of the delta, the Waraos are still nomads. So when the resources of this place are used up, or the house made out of palm leaves has seen better days, they climb in their dugout and move on to another branch of the river. With the last rubber dinghy aboard, we weigh anchor and set forth on our journey farther up ahead in the delta. Commander Lemaire, Jacques, the cruise director, and Ignacio, the leader of the expedition, take counsel together with a view towards the next outing. This one is to be devoted entirely to nature observation. As soon as we weigh anchor, the boat is surrounded by dugouts. Women with impenetrable faces, paddling non-stop to resist the force of the current, stay there a long while not saying a word, not making the merest suggestion of a gesture, fascinated or simply curious. During this time, sailors are helping the nature guides to outfit the rubber dinghies for the next outing. This ecosystem, unique in the world, domain of the mangrove and tropical forest, shelters an amazing variety of essences: palm trees, mangroves, orchids, aquatic plants. Impossible to inventory, or better yet, to identify them, without the help of a passionate botanist.
The red flower you see to the right of the boat is called the monkey's toothbrush. It's a flower that develops into like a bottle brush and gives off a very sweet-smelling odor that attracts hummingbirds. So it's pollinated by hummingbirds that we call flybirds. In spite of its pretty name, monkeys don't use it. This is a Cecropia tree. The leaves are the sloth's favorite food. There are loads of products that we're still discovering in the pharmacopoeia that the Indians have known about for a long time. When they had wounds, for example, bloody gashes in their skin, they made up a sort of plaster with the leaves. It's one of the treasures of the forest of the Amazon and the Orinoco basins. There are loads of chemical products that can be used for our pharmaceutical industry in the future.
Not far from here, on another branch of the river, Natacha, also a nature guide, is a real bird enthusiast. Many species of the green-coated royal parrot live in this part of the Orinoco. Hummingbird, heron, toucan, macaw, kingfisher. Many find refuge in the forest along the river. The bird that we've just sighted doesn't show up very often, though. It's the wadzin.
These wadzin are very, very rare birds. They're pretty special birds evolution-wise, in that their babies still have claws at the tips of their wings. They're vegetarians. They only eat leaves. They're a bit like ruminants, with protozoa in the interior of their digestive tube to help digest difficult composite, like cellulose. They often hide deep in the forest foliage.
At the initiative of Ignacio, the expedition leader, we set out for a nocturnal outing. With no visual aid other than the lamp's beam that sweeps the banks of the river, the mystery is even more intense. The song of the forest isn't the same. It reveals another life.
With the lamp, it's very easy to see the eyes of a caiman and those of a snake.
That is exactly what Ignacio has just spotted, a snake. A boa about 1.5 meters long.
You can see the camouflage a little. The snakes, in fact, get mixed up with the branches. Thanks to the reflection of light in our eyes at night, we can observe them. It's another life, calmer. It's a different atmosphere.
Personally, which do you prefer?
I like all the outings, night and day.
During the night, we leave the delta to go back to the Orinoco, 200 kilometers upriver to Ciudad Guyana. Located at the confluence of the Orinoco and the Caroni rivers, Ciudad Guyana, with its 500,000 inhabitants, is the nerve center of the region. It exports containers filled with bauxite and iron, the two minerals that abound in Bolivar, the state running along the southern banks of the Orinoco until the Brazilian border. This region conceals other treasures as well. Located 300 kilometers south of Ciudad Guyana, inaccessible by road, we set out towards Canaima National Park. Flying over one of the oldest landscapes on Earth, where enormous stone citadels called tepuis have risen. The famous 979-meter Salto Angel, with its sheer vertical rock face, is the highest waterfall in the world. Traversed by the Caroni River, dominated by tepuis, virtual totems to nature, this savanna belongs to the Paimon Indians. One branch of the Paimon, a small community of Arikuna Indians, lives along the river. Palm-roofed houses with cob walls. This is the traditional Arikuna dwelling. They live off their fishing and farming, especially manioc. They work their land just the same as their ancestors did 1,000 years ago. Once peeled and grated, the manioc is placed inside the grass snake. This long cylindrical basket is used to press the pulp of the manioc to get rid of the harmful juice. Ground into flour, the manioc will be baked like a pancake on a griddle. This is the kassav, Amerindian bread. The family lives under the authority of an old one. He ensures the relations with the outside world, maintains tradition, and keeps up the Pemon language. He also knows the legends, like this one in this song about the sun god whose tears of sadness give birth to the Canaima Falls. These waterfalls, pouring into the lagoon with the tepuis in the background, standing out sharply against the sky, are overwhelmingly beautiful.
We're in a lagoon. In fact, it isn't really a lagoon because there is water flowing all the time. Here on the right we can see the first falls. Its name is Ukaima. Ukaima in the Indian dialect means that which attracts. The second in the center in front of us is Swallow Falls, Kershi Palau in the Indian language. The third one further on is called Guadaima. Guadaima in Indian is mermaid. Finally, the last one, which is a double one in fact, is the Hatchet Waterfalls.
Back on board the Levant, we pick up our route again, this time towards the sea. The next port of call will be the last on our journey on the Orinoco. We've arrived once more in Waraos country. Here at the El Toro village, contrary to the nomadic population we met on the way up, the Indians have been sedentarized. We do not read on the faces of these young people that greet us the same shyness that betrayed the look of the women we came across further upriver.
We and the nature guides try to respect these people, especially not interfering in the environment of the populations we encounter. Because we do a round trip, the head of our expedition asks the leaders of the communities or the village chiefs just what they need, and we provide it. For example, in Peru, it could be a machete, or a school notebook, or medicines. We prefer to give things away ourselves, so the passengers are not influenced. We also try not to create needs, like you can see a little bit everywhere nowadays.
El Toro is committed to development. But they only get the leftovers, and the paradoxes are pretty blatant. The transistor lives side by side with the hammock, and the Spanish language side by side with Warao. Shacks bordering the cemented alley have replaced traditional houses on piles. Respect for tradition, or the quest for a better life brought about by modernity. This is the issue confronting a teacher every single day.
Efectuar. Recuerden que tenemos una suma de este tema. Entonces, hemos dicho que aquí tenemos dos. Esa es una de las cosas más primordiales en el Bajo Delta.
One of the most important things in this part of the Orinoco Delta is the problem we have communicating with the Guaros. In fact, the situation is that the Minister of Education demands that we be bilingual, that is, that we speak both Guaro and Castilian. Beyond the educational basics that the Guaros are given, we should be encouraging them to renew the fundamentals and the traditional values of their culture, a culture that they are losing slowly but surely. Here, our goal is to make them aware of the idea that their life is here in the country, because they can take advantage of their knowledge and their savoir-faire found at the source of their cultural ancestral values. These cultural values that they are in fact losing little by little with the passing years.
We are leaving the Orinoco Delta and its inhabitants definitively, with real sadness. The Levant heads north towards the Caribbean Sea. At the end of a long trip across the Lesser Antilles, the Levant sights Pointe-à-Pitre in Guadeloupe. It was around 1500 BC that the first wave of Arawak Indians left the Orinoco Delta, reaching the West Indies and Guadeloupe. A second wave, this time coming most likely from Suriname, overtakes the first around 700 AD. It's these descendants of the Caribbean Indians that confront the Spanish when they arrive in the New World in 1493. Hunted down, decimated from the first years of colonization starting in 1635, the Caribbean Indians disappear from Guadeloupe. Traces of their long presence are still visible everywhere on the island, starting with the Pointe-à-Pitre market. From their faraway Amazon, the Amerindians brought with them a huge quantity of plants. The list is long for the fruits and vegetables that we still find today in a colorful West Indian display shelf. The yam and the sweet potato, the avocado, the cocoa bean, gourds that served as dishes, the sour soup, the guava, the papaya, not forgetting, of course, the manioc. We also find hot peppers that the Caribbean peoples call ati. And the ruku, whose red pulp surrounding the seeds is used to make dye. But the Caribbean Indians and the Arawak were not only warriors, fishermen, and farmers, or ingenious craftsmen carving small boats from tree trunks and weaving hammocks. They were also artists. Witness the many engraved rocks found in Guadeloupe.
All the engraved rock sites were chosen on purpose. They have a particularly magical aspect. It's connected to water, the river, but not just any place. It is water at its source, water that meets the ocean. It's a basin, a waterfall. They really chose the magical side of a spot. I wouldn't say this is the first time we find anthropomorphic characters, representations of humans, because we do have two examples elsewhere. But of this size, this spectacular appearance, it really is the first time. First of all, we only found this character here. And it was in brushing away the abundant vegetation that we discovered a second character lower down, in an almost horizontal position, without masculine features, but rather feminine features. What's more, we found a face at the level of the pubis. It is without a doubt a female in the birthing position. It is a scene that we find often with the Amerindians. Another example is at Kourou, where you have a large number of female characters in the birthing position. The Guadeloupean is looking for his Caribbean roots. For a long time it was his African roots. There's an awareness now that the origin, the first inhabitants, were the Caribbeans.